Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome back. And as you all know that since the past few days, we've been covering upon the topic of algebra, right? And today we're gonna take it forward. We're gonna take it forward. Last we learned a little about inequalities, expressions, and equations. We solved a couple of simultaneous equations, right? And then I give you guys some tasks as well, I think. And on Friday we learned about different methods of solving simultaneous equations, which were elimination, substitution, right? And graphical method. Now we started off with a topic called functions. Last that I remember, we started off with a topic called functions, right? I explained you guys what functions are and some basics of functions, right? So first, how functions are represented. Now I'm going to start over with the topic of functions yet again. I'm going to start off freshly with the topic of functions. Now I'm going to tell you how to represent it. Okay, in order to represent a function, we write it as f of x. Okay, f of x means function of x. It could also be written as f colon x. Okay, or it could also be written as f arrow and then x. All of these notations are for function of x. So what does a function of x means? Function of x means that it's basically an equation of in terms of x. Okay, so it could be x, it could be 2x plus 5, right? It could be any equation which has the term x in it. All right, it couldn't be any equation which does not have an x in it, and it should only be the equation which only contains the variable x. It cannot contain any other variable except for x, because it's basically a function of x. So what's a function of x? A function of f is basically an equation written solely in form of x. So if I write it as y equals to 2x plus 5, so that's basically the same thing. And now we've learned that this type of equation is basically what we learned was a linear equation, right? Now function can is not restricted to a linear equation. It could also be, let's say that if I wrote it as f of x equals to x squared plus 4, then it would be a quadratic equation. It would be a quadratic function. An equation and a function is exactly the same thing, except for the fact that in an equation it could contain many different variables. However, in a function it can only contain single variable for which the function is stated as. Okay, if I write it as a function of n, right? Or maybe a function of m, because x and m is written same, right? So if I've written it as a function of m, then the whole equation must only contain a single variable, which is m. It could be a quadratic equation, it doesn't matter. It could be a cubic equation, it could be anything, but it should only contain the variable m, right? So an example of it would be 2m plus 2m minus 9. So that's a function of m, right? So do you understand this? And then we talked a little bit about what exactly is called domain and what exactly is called a range, right? So what does a domain mean? Depending upon a function, we need to put in some constraints as to how many numbers can there be in x. All right, and for each x there would be a corresponding y. So the number of x's that we can incorporate in that particular equation, that's called domain. What do I mean by that? Like, let's say for example, if I've written it as f of, now let's talk about domain first. Okay, so let's talk about domain. Let me put in the heading domain over here. Okay, so domain. So what's a domain? All right, so domain is basically nothing but domain is not basically nothing but it contains the limits of x involved in an equation. Let's say, for example, if we talk about it, we can say that if f of x can have the values, if x is basically 2x plus 5, right? So there is no number of x, there's no value of x that we cannot put in, right? We can put in any value of x and it will give us a valid corresponding answer of f of x, right? So let's say if I put in 2, if I have to put in 2, x equals to 2, so how do I write it? I write it as f function of 2. That means instead of x I'm writing 2 over here, so in the equation as well I'm going to substitute my x with 2, right? So it's going to give us 2 times 2, 4, plus 5 gives us 9, right? So for a function of 2 we have a valid value of 9, so that's a valid number, right? Similarly, like this, we can put in any number that we can imagine and we can put it in, right? So what we can say that for this type of equation the domain is x belongs to real number. Okay, so what does that mean? Real number can be any number from, what does a real number mean? Any number from positive infinity to negative infinity. It could be any number. What does an infinity mean? Infinity means any number which is larger enough to imagine. All right, so we can count, we can add any number that we want to. All right, now that being said, let's talk about some constraints of domains. Okay, so if I give you an example, like um, let's say f of x is equals to um, x square plus 4 x square plus 4 divided by x minus 1. All right, so at a certain value of x we do not get an answer. Can any one of you tell me that which value would it be that we cannot? Can any one of you tell me that which value of x does not give us a valid answer? Okay, so what does a valid answer means? Like if I have a 0 in the denominator, this means that the function of x would return a value of infinity, right? Any like in the denominator, if I have a value of 0, it will not give me a valid value of a function, right? So what's that number which will give me a denominator equals to 0? So x minus 1. So if I write my x equals to 1, right, so function of 1 gives me what? 1 square. Yes, so somebody answered it right. All right, so somebody did answer it right, right? So it's 1 square plus 4. Now if I substitute that 1 in the denominator as well, it's going to give me 1 minus 1, right? So in the numerator it's going to obviously going to 1 square plus 1 is going to give me 5. However, in the denominator it's going to give me 0. So in the calculator, if you guys try it, it's going to give you maths error because there's no valid answer to this. We're getting an infinity over here, so that means that there's a restriction over here. So what's the restriction? The restriction is that x cannot be equals to 1. It could be any other number but 1, right? It could even be a negative 1. It doesn't matter. So if I try it with negative 1, right? If I try this function with a negative 1, so it doesn't really matter. So negative 1 square plus 4 divided by negative 1 minus 1, right? So what's the answer? 1 negative 1 square is 1 plus 4, right? Then in the denominator is going to be negative 1 negative 2, negative 1 minus 2, so it's negative 1 minus 1, so it's going to be negative 2, right? So the final answer would be negative 5 over 2. So that's a valid number. It doesn't matter what the number is, it's a valid number, right? It's not infinity. So this would be my domain for this equation. Do you understand this? So domain does not always means that what it can contain. It sometimes also mean what it cannot contain. If there's a restriction, we we just simplify it to a fact that it does not contain this value. It cannot contain x equals to 1, right? Now let's move on to finding out some ranges. Okay, so what do I mean by range this time? Can any one of you, like, I know we've done this before. We did a little bit about this. We didn't do this part in the last class because it was just an introduction the last time. Now we are doing it. So can any one of you tell me what's range? Okay, so any guesses are also welcome. Right, so any guesses are also welcome, right? Now what's a range? Come on guys, we did discuss this last time. Yeah, so what is it? So basically what range is, range tells you the value of a function that you get as an answer. Okay, so let's take an example that if I write my function, if I have a function fx equals to 2x plus 5, right? So if I put in my domains, like if I change the value of domains constantly, like from negative infinity to positive infinity, then what's the highest number that I'm going to get, right? It totally depends on the number of x, right? So if I take my number x equals to 1 and I place it in the function, right? Function of 1, like by function of 1 it means that function value of a function at x equals to 1, right? So 2 times 1 plus 5, right? So the answer would be 7. So this, my friends, the the is the value of the function, right? This is what I'm talking about. So range tells us how far along can the value of the function go. So in terms of graph, if we see graphically, this is the x-axis, right? This horizontal one is x-axis, right? And this one is y-axis. So range tells you how much my graph moves in the vertical direction, right? How much possibly a large can it get, how much possibly negative it can get. Similarly, in terms of domain, it means how much on the horizontal axis it can move, how much further can it move, how much backwards can it move. So that's what domain indicates, and what range indicates basically is how much further can the range move. Okay, so that is what basically our range is. So now if we talk about it, it's pretty simple. Now what's the range? Range is in this term any number of x can be put in, hence any number of y can be obtained. So this means that x basically range also belongs to the range of this function also belongs to a real number. Do you understand why a real number? Because it could be infinitely long and it could also go to the infinite bottom. Do you understand this? If you guys have any queries, feel free to ask me right now. Comment in the text box below and I'll read them surely. All right. So yeah, let's move ahead. Let's move to another concept which is about composite functions. Okay, so what's a composite function, right? We I think we did discuss this the last time as well, as far as I can remember, but we didn't go into depth of it. But we'll surely do this time, right? So, is there any one of you who remember what did I explain about a composite function? What's a composite function? Can anyone answer me? Come on, guys. I know you all know this by now. So, what's a composite function? Can anyone tell me? Come on, guys, hurry up. Reply. Right. So for what a composite function indicates is if our function is basically made up of more than one functions. All right. So let's say that a composite function consists of more than one functions, right? So as I told you that the let's say that if I have a function of x as 2x plus 5, right? And now I have another function which is indicated by h of x, right? And it's indicated as 3x minus 7. Now if I write down a composite function that says find out find find f h of x, okay? Now find f h of x, right? So what do? First we solve the outer bracket, that's f, so we take the equation of f, right? Now in term of x, what we're gonna do, we're gonna write down the value of x, hx. Okay, so what's the value of hx? Hx 3x minus 7, so 3x minus 7, right? So now we just simplify it. So 2 times 3 becomes 6x, and 2 times 7 becomes negative 14, right? Plus 5, right? So the final answer would be 6x minus 9. So that's as simple as it gets. So that is our value, like the value is 6x minus 9. So that's f h of x, okay? I hope you understand this. Now in the second part, so let's take it as first part one, okay? Now in the second step, I say that find out the value of f h 2. So now what do? We already have the value of, we already have an equation of f h, right? And now what we're going to do, we're going to place 2 instead of x, so it's going to be 6 times 2 minus 9, so it becomes 12 minus 9, so the final answer would be 3. So that is our value of f h 2, right? I hope this is clear to all of you. If there's nothing clear, then please let me know. If you did not understand anything up till now, please feel free to ask me. All right. Now moving on. Um, moving on, we're gonna go on to a little difficult part of functions, which is technically not that difficult. However, I've seen in the past that some students find it really difficult, which is inverse of a function. How to find inverse of a function. So for you guys especially, I've gone down and found out a way which is much simpler in terms of solving it, right? So in case I'm going to explain it, but you just have to follow the exact steps that I'm doing. Okay, so now how does an inverse of function look like? So if it says f negative 1x, so that means now it's talking about, this is basically an inverse of fx. Okay, so this is an inverse of fx. Okay, this is how you write it down. Right now, if I say let's say that if I have a function fx equals to um, fx equals to 2x minus 7, right? So this is my function. Now the first part of this of the question is find inverse of a function, right? To find inverse of a function, how do we do that? So just follow the simple steps. I'm going to repeat these steps, okay? They are pretty simple. Now write down the same function. Okay, so the function is fx equals to 2x minus 7. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to replace my fx with y, because we've seen in the past that fx is basically equivalent to y. Fx is the value of y, right? It's the value on y-axis, right? That's where we got the range from, right? So it basically means that fx can be replaced by y. So we put in y instead of fx, right? So the equation goes 2x minus 7, right? Now we have to make x the subject. Okay, now we have to make x the subject. That means we have to isolate x. So what do we mean by that? First we're going to move 7 to the other side, so it becomes y plus 7, right? It becomes equals to 2x. Now 2x, or maybe I should write it down as 2x equals to y plus 7. So that's basically the same thing. Now we have to isolate x. So what do? We take, because 2 is in multiply over here, we're going to take it to the other side. It's going to go into divide, right? So it goes like y plus 7 divided by 2, right? So now that we have our x isolated and we have the whole function, we have the whole equation in terms of y, so we can call it as function of y equals to y plus 7 divided by 2. Now here's what I'm going to tell you in addition form. Like function of y can be written as an inverse function of x. Okay, so now here we're going to substitute inverse function of x instead of y. So if we're going to write down inverse function of x, that means our equation should contain x, right? But here it contains y, so we're going to replace our y with an x. Okay, so it's going to be x plus 7 divided by 2. So that is our final answer of how to find an inverse. So, do you guys understand this? Is there anyone who did not get it at all? Okay, so don't worry about it. We're going to do some of the questions right now. So that's pretty much it in terms of functions. Uh, there is certain things that how to find out by looking at the graph, how to find out the function of that graph. I'm going to teach you all that. But for now, this is the major calculation portion of functions in terms of GCSEs O levels. Okay, so if you guys did not understand anything, please let me know right now. If you guys did not understand how to find out the functions, let me know in the comments and I'll read it out. Okay, so is there anyone who did not understand this? Okay, so by the looks of it, it looks like every one of you got it. So that's great if every one of you got it, right? Now, okay, so now let's move on to our questions. All right, now here's some of the questions for you guys. Okay, let me just so guys, it's not that difficult of a topic, so just take it easy. Okay, now see this question. It's a pretty simple question, right? It has given you an equation, right? And now what they're asking you is to find out the value of f7. So what does it mean by that? Now instead of x, they have replaced it with 7. So what do? We write f of x equals to 2x plus 1 divided by 3. Now instead of x, we're going to write down 7. So f of 7, right? Then in terms of equation as well, we're going to replace our x with 7. So 2 times 7 plus 1 divided by 3, right? So it becomes 2 times 7 becomes 14, 14 plus 1 becomes 15, right? So 15 divided by 3, and the final answer would be 5, right? So that's our value of f7. So f7, function of 7 equals to 5. So that's our answer. Okay, see, pretty simple. So that's called evaluating the answer. That's called evaluating the answer. Evaluating the answer. Okay, so yeah. Now let's move on to finding out an inverse of this function. Now take 2 minutes, right? I just explained you how to find out the functions, inverse of a function. So just take 2 minutes and solve it yourself. And I'm gonna continue after 2 minutes. Okay, take your time and solve this for me. Now, okay, so I see a lot of people joining in, right? So let me just do this one and then we'll continue. We'll ask, we have a few questions left, so you'll get ample time to continue working on it. So follow the steps, right? So just write down the equation first. Fx equals to 2x plus 1 divided by 3. Now the first step is to replace our fx with y, right? So we replaced it. Now 2x plus 1 divided by 3. Now what do? We have to isolate our x. So what do? First, we can't just take 1 over there, right? We have to dissolve the denominator because it's a denominator on both, right? So let's take 3 to the other side first. So if I take 3 to the other side, it becomes 3y, right? And then this is 2x plus 1. Now I have to isolate x, right? So I move my 1 to the other side, so it becomes 3y minus 1 equals to 2x, right? And now I have to isolate x, so I take 2 to the other side as well, right? So 2 is in multiply over here, it goes into divide when it goes to the other side of the equals to sign. So, so it becomes 3y minus 1 divided by 2. It becomes equals to x, right? So our basic answer would be x. Now we replace this x with a function of y sign because our whole term is in terms of y, right? So we write it as function of y equals to 3y minus 1 divided by 2. Now remember what I taught you, function of y is always equals to an inverse function of x, right? So what do? We replace it with x over here, right? Inverse of x, right? So inverse of x equals to, now here the equation which is written in terms of y, right? So we write x instead of y. So 3x minus 1 divided by 2. So that is our final answer. I hope every one of you understood it. If there's anyone who did not understand it, please let me know right now and I'll explain it again. Okay, so is there anyone who did not understand this? Okay, so all of you did. That's great. Now let's do a couple of more questions. Now this time we'll do questions of composite functions, right? So these are all some past papers questions, right? So they're not questions that I made up. They're the questions that came in the exam. Okay. So now see, I taught you. Okay, so asked me that to explain it one more time, so I'll do it one more time, right? So here was the part B said that we needed to find out the inverse of our function. So this was a function, right? So there are simple steps which I'm going to explain to you how to find out the inverse, right? So we just write down our function as it is. Okay, so I explained to them earlier that f of x can be written as equals to y, because f of x basically tells us the range. So range is on y-axis, so it basically tells us the value of y, right? So we can substitute f of y instead of f of x, right? Now we need to isolate x. So these are all the steps which involved isolating x till here. Okay, we made x the subject, and when we did that, we substituted function of y instead of x. Why did we do that? Because see, I taught you that if I write a function as a function of x, that means that the whole equation which is going to follow, it will be in terms of x only, right? But here the whole equation is in terms of y, so it does not mean that it will be the function of x, it means that it will be a function of y. Now if I write it as a function of y, see, this makes sense now. If it's a function of y, because the whole equation right here contains um, variable y, right? Now there's a rule over here. So if I write anything as a function of y, it means that it's basically a function, an inverse of x. Okay, it is an inverse of x, right? So if I write if I write it as function of y equals to f of x, that means I can replace my function of y and write f of x over here. So if I write f of x over here, then I need to have x in the whole term as well. So instead of where y was, I now replaced it with an x. So I hope now it is clear, Akil. Right? And don't worry, we're gonna do a couple of more questions. So I hope that you will get a better idea by then. Okay, so let's move on to this question now. I have two equations, which is f of x and g of x. So what they're asking us is to find out the value of fg2. Now first I need to solve fgx. So how am I going to do that? So I take the function of f, right, which is 3 times x minus 1. Now instead of x over here, I have gx. So what's the value of gx? So gx is 2x plus 4, right? Now I simplify it, so 2 times 3 becomes 6x, right? And 2 times 4 becomes 3 times 4 becomes 12, right? So minus 1. So the final answer would be 6x plus 11, right? So in this equation, we're going to write down fg2, right? So fg2, right? So now instead of x, we're going to write 2 over here. So 6 times 2 plus 11. Okay, so the final answer would be 12 plus 11, and the value would be 23, right? So I hope everyone's clear with that. Now let's try ff3, right? So now what we need to do is, first we need to find out the composite function ff, right? So if I have function of f inside a function of f, right? So what am I going to do? First I'm going to write the function of f, which is 3x minus 1, right? And now instead of x, I'm going to substitute another function of f, which is 3x minus 1 again, right? So 3 times 3 becomes 9x, right? And then 3 times negative 1 becomes negative 3, and now minus 1, right? So the final answer would be 9x minus 4. Now instead of x, I'm going to substitute it with 3. So f3, and instead of x, I'm going to write down 3. So 9 times 3 minus 4. So 9 times 3 becomes 27. 27 minus 4 becomes 23. So that is our answer. Okay, so this is 23 as well, right? And now we're going to find out gfx. Okay, so to start with, the first function is g, right? So we write down the value of g, so g f and then x, right? So gx is what? 2x plus 4, so it's written as 2x plus 4. Now instead of x, we're going to substitute fx, right? Now instead of x, we're going to substitute the value of f. So the value of f is 3x minus 1, right? So the final answer is 2 times 3 is 6x, 2 times 1 is negative 2, and then plus 4. So it would be 6x plus 2. So that is the value of g f x. I hope this is clear. if if you have any problem in any part of this question, kindly let me know in the comment box. Is everything clear? So really hope that's clear. Now, okay, so here's an interesting question, right? So this is our question. Let's just copy it over here. All right. Now this is the question. So I'm gonna give you all 2 minutes to do part one, and then I'm gonna continue off from there. Okay, so basically let me just explain the question. So it has three functions: fx, gx, and hx. Now the first part is asking us fg of x. Okay, so now take 2 minutes and solve it. See, maths is all about practice, and if you guys going to solve it, then only we are able to reach our final answer, and then only we're gonna get better. So just solve these questions, and don't worry, I'm gonna do it with you in just about 30 seconds. So has any one of you found the answers? Okay, so by now I haven't received any, but let's just get started and see if I receive any answers in the following. Right, so the first part is to find out the value of fgx. So what are we going to do? We're going to take f, g, and then x. Okay, so we're going to write down the function fx. So it is x squared minus 3, right? Now in terms of x, now in place of x, what we're going to do is we're going to substitute gx. Okay, so what's the value of gx? Gsx 2x plus 1. So 2x plus 1, all right, square minus 3, right? So if I'm gonna open it up, it's gonna be, so I have to use the formula. If I have a plus b whole square, right? So how am I gonna open it? I'm gonna open it with a square plus 2ab plus b square. So similarly, I'm gonna apply this over here as well. So a square is 2x square plus 2ab, 2 times, what's the value of a? A is 2x, and what's the value of b? B is 1, right? Plus b square, which is 1 square, right, in the rest of the equation, so minus 3. So the answer of this would be a 2x squared is 4x squared plus 2 times 2 is 4, so 4x plus 1 minus 3. So in terms of simplified answer, it would be 4x squared plus 4 minus 2 plus 4x minus 2. So that's our value for f g of x, right? So this is our answer. Now we're gonna find out the value of g hx. So we're gonna find out the value of GHX. So what's the value of GX? So GH of x, right? So what's the value of G is 2x plus 1. So 2x plus 1. So now instead of x, we're gonna write down our h, because h is inside G. So it is x divided by 2, right? To simplify it, we're gonna cancel out these two because they are both in, upon each other. So yeah, so it's going to be 2 over 2, so it's basically left with x plus 1. So that is our answer to GH of x. Okay, so I hope this is clear now. And the last part is to find out the inverse of h, which is pretty easy. So just write down h of x, right? It is x divided by 2. So what did I explain you? It's the function is going to be equals to y, so y equals to x over 2, right? And now I'm going to make x the subject, so it becomes 2y equals to x, right? And then instead of x, I'm going to write down h of y equals to 2y, right? Now instead of h of y, I can write it down as h inverse of x, and instead of y here, I'm going to write down 2x. So that is the answer. That is the answer to our third problem, right? So is there anyone who did not understand it? If you guys did not, then please do let me know, right? So I'm gonna do these last two questions with you. If you haven't still understood this, please let me know, so that I can explain it to you. Right now, here is a question for you all. Okay, so here we are also given two equations, one in terms of fx and the other one in terms of gx. Right, in the part A, we have to find out g f of x, g f3, and then we have to solve the equation g fx equals to 80. So yeah, take 2 minutes, completely solve it. Okay, so faster finger guys, I'm waiting for you all. Okay, so whoever gets me the answer first, I'm gonna call out their name here on the live. So come on guys, hurry up. Okay, so let's do it together. Right, so we have our first equation as fx equals to x minus 3x and gx equals to 4x. Now what they're asking you is to find out the value of gf3, right? For that we have to find out gfx, right? So what are we going to do? So first we have to write down the value of g. So the value of gx is 4x. Now in place of x, what we're going to do, we're going to substitute our equation of fx, because fx is inside gx, right? And now if I write down f, it's going to be 8 minus 3x, right? If I simplify it, it's going to be 4 times 8, which is what? Which is 32, right? So I just write down 32 over here, right? And then 4 times 3 is negative 12x. So that is my answer to g f x. Now in place of g f x, I have to write down, find the value of gf3, right? So in place of x in this equation, I'm going to substitute it with 3. So 32 minus 12 times 3, right? So I'm going to substitute it with 12 times 3, which is 36, right? So 32 minus 36, my final answer would be 4. So that is the value of gf3. Is there anyone who got it right? All right, now let's move on to this part. So it says gfx equals to 80. So our equation for gfx is this one, right? So I'm going to write it down over here. Gfx equals to 32 minus 12x, right? What's the value of gfx? So here the value of gfx is 80. So I'm going to substitute 80 over here in place of gfx, right? So my equation is going to be 32 minus 12x, right? I hope you guys follow me. Okay, so 12 is going to go to this side, and 80 is going to come to this side. So if 12 goes to this side, it's going to be positive 12x equals to 32, and then 80 is going to go to the other side. It's going to become negative 80 because it was positive over to this side of the equation. Now 32 minus 80, what's the answer? Quickly guys, 32 minus 80, what's the answer? Come on, hurry up. What's the answer of 32 minus 80? So the answer of 32 minus 80 is 48, negative 48, right? So I'm going to write it down as 12x equals to negative 48, right? And now in place of negative 48, and I'm going to isolate my x. I have to find out the value of x, right? I have to solve the equation. So that means I have to find out the value of x. So 12 goes to the other side, it goes into divide, right? Okay, so I have to write it a bit larger this time. So it becomes x equals to negative 48, and then 12 goes to the other side, it becomes into divide. Now 48 divided by 12, what's the answer? The answer is negative 4, right? So negative 4. So that is the value of x, right? So it's negative 4, right? Now this is going to be most probably the last question, and in case you guys want me to continue with the questions, kindly comment that. Okay, kindly comment that. Somebody answered it as 58, so I don't understand how it's 58. 32 minus 80 is 48, negative 48, not 58, right? So this is going to be the last of our practice, right? Take a minute and solve it for yourself. I hope you guys can see the question at least. If you guys are having any problem in seeing the question, then let me know. So I'll just make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so this is the question. 80 minus 22. Where 80 minus 22? It's 32, not 22. It's 32. 32. Okay, so now let's solve it together. Okay, so our problem is fx equals to 3x divided by 5 plus 1, right? So now, according to this step, what should be our first step over here? Who can answer me? What should be our first step over here? All right, so our first step should be to substitute y instead of fx, right? So y equals to 3x upon 5 plus 1, right? So now what we do, we have to isolate this x. Okay, in order for us to do that, what are we going to do? We're gonna take 1 to the other side, so it becomes y minus 1 equals to 3x upon 5, right? And now we're going to take 5 to the other side, so it becomes 5 times y minus 1 equals to 3x, right? And now we take 3 to the divide, it becomes 5 y minus 1 divided by 3, right? So it becomes x. Okay, so our final answer is 5 times y minus 1 divided by 3. All right, now the next step would be to write it as a function of y. Fy equals to 5 times y minus 1 divided by 3, right? Now instead of 5 function of y, we can write it down as inverse function of x equals to 5 times. Now instead of y over here, we're gonna write down x minus 1 divided by 3. Is this clear to all of you? So that is how we find an inverse of this function. So this is the answer. So guys, we're gonna start off with a new topic. Not with a new topic. We're gonna continue off with a little bit about graphs of different type of functions in the next class, and I'm gonna explain you how to find out the graphs of different type of functions in the next class, which would be on Wednesday. So stay tuned, join the live session on Wednesday as well, right? And then on Wednesday, I'm going to continue off with a little bit with another topic. All right, so we're going to start off with geometry in the next session, which would be on Wednesday. So stay tuned, join us in the next class. I'm gonna Let me repeat it. So I'm gonna start off with the graph of functions in the next class, and with a new topic that would be geometry, right? As for your homework, I am going to give you 3 questions. All right, so I'm gonna give you 3 questions, and I want you guys to solve them, right? And it would be a good task for you guys to practice on, right? This is what we've learned so far. We've come a long way in terms of function, right? So I'm gonna display it over here. So you guys might want to take a quick screenshot of it. All right, if you want me to make it a little bigger, I can do that as well. So that's the whole screen. So this is question number 8 and 9. All right, and then this is question number 10. So I'm gonna zoom it out so that you guys can take a screenshot. Just zoom in the questions, try working on it, and get back to me with the answers, right? Once you guys get back to me with the answers, it's gonna be really helpful for me so that I can know that you guys actually did understand whatever was being taught to you this time. Okay. So, is there any question that you want to ask me from this class? Anything that you did not explain and that you did not understand? We still have a couple of minutes left in the live session. So, anything that you did not understand, we've done a lot of things. So let me just remind it. So we learned how to denote a function, right? What are domains, what are ranges. We talked a little bit about how to find a composite function, right? Which was our primary focus today. And then we talked about how to find out an inverse of a function, right? Then we did one question regarding the inverse, and then we did another one regarding the composite functions. Then this question was a combination of both of them, right? Similarly, this was a combination of both of them also. Now it comes down to this question. These three are going to be your home task. Complete them, and you can ask for solutions in the next class. I'm going to display the solutions over here. Just remind me in the chat in the next class to display the solutions to these questions, or we might as well do them in the next class as well. So if I did not receive any response from you guys, I am not gonna probably do it, but if I did get a response, then I'm gonna do it in the next class as well. All right, so yeah, that's it for today. If you have any questions, kindly let me know. Yeah, we can definitely close up. So this is question number 8 and 9. Okay, take a quick screenshot of it so that I can move down. Yeah, solve them and get back to me with the solutions in the next class. And this is question number 10. All right, I hope you all now have taken up the screenshots. So I have not yet received any queries. That's no worries. If you guys missed the lesson today, I think it's going to be posted on YouTube, right? So the next class would be on Wednesday. Yeah, the next class would be on Wednesday, right? So yes, that's about it, right? So from goodbye from my side for today. Hopefully, would see you guys on Wednesday, right? Take care of yourselves. Enjoy. All right. Take care. Bye.